Hi, this is Bogdana, and this is Ballet Tech Talks. Today we're interviewing Jilian Gersten, our board chair. So, Jilian, what does it mean to be a board chair member?
Well, there's board members, and then I'm the chair of the board. So boards have members, and that can be a number of people. Our board has 14 people right now, and then within that membership, there's some officers, which sounds very official, but officers do have a special role. There's a secretary, there's a treasurer, there's a vice chair, and there's a chair. And the chair is sort of the head of the whole structure. So that makes me sound really important, but I don't make decisions for the organization. The board's role is advice and consent. And so there are certain things that the organization through the leadership have to talk to the board about and that we advise about. And then there's certain things we vote on, like we approve a budget for a year or we approve other things, changes to how we govern ourselves. And then we have committees that do other kinds of work I can talk about if you're interested.
What influenced you to become one?
Well, I'm a child of not-for-profit arts administrators, so I sort of was raised in a household where not-for-profit arts work was very much what they all did and what I was exposed to. I actually, have been in this office many times before, and then as I started my own career, I fell naturally into arts administration. Working here first, actually, I was an intern here at Ballet Tech. I worked here when I graduated college. I had been a student here when I was your age, a little younger. And then as I began my own work, leaving Ballet Tech and doing other work in arts administration work, and then ultimately in fundraising, I got asked to be on a couple of boards, first from friends of mine who graduated college and started a dance company, and they needed board members in order to incorporate. And so I got started with board service relatively early in life. Then I joined another board of another dance-based organization here in New York called Dance Based Project down in the East Village, and served there for about 12 years. And I think it was 5 years ago now, Elliot Feld, the founder of Ballet Tech, who I've known since I was born, asked both myself and my sister, who he's known us both forever, if we would join the board here, because he knew that he wouldn't be here forever, and he wanted somebody who knew him and his vision well to help represent the future of the organization, even as he knew he wouldn't be here. I don't mean on this earth, but I mean he knew he wouldn't be working here for much longer.
What is the most challenging part about being a board chair?
Well, it can be really challenging. There have been times when we face moments that are not the usual day-to-day business, like what I talked about before, like approving budgets or passing minutes. We helped oversee a transition in leadership in this organization for the first time in its history. That was challenging. It meant spending a lot of time doing a lot of talking about and thinking about what we thought as a board the future of this organization should look like, who we wanted to see in a new leader here, and still honor and respect the legacy of what Elliot built, but see how we could develop with different leadership. So it was both a challenge and an opportunity, but there was a lot of work involved, a lot of time put in, and I really respect all my colleagues on the board who put in serious time. We're all volunteers. This isn't paid labor. It's something that everyone does outside of their work and family lives. So that was extra levels of devotion. And the other challenge is you want to maintain the board, so we don't want everyone to get frustrated and quit. We want it to feel fulfilling and interesting and invigorating, but not overly draining. And I think that transition, I was worried a lot of people would get tired of board service, but I'm very proud to say that we have actually added board members since then. And I'm sure there'll be people that rotate off naturally. There's people on the board who've served over 20 years now. But we're in a process of also building and bringing in new energy. So the challenge is sort of that going with the flow and the peaks and valleys of work and service and trying to maintain people's interest and inspiration.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned being in the school. What influenced you, or do you have like a favorite dancer that influenced you to dance?
Well, My first teacher at Ballet Tech was actually Miss Sari. Do you remember her?
No, we never had her.
Well, she was the teacher here for many years. Maybe just before you arrived, she left. So she was a dear influence of mine because I had grown up watching her dance with the company. You'll see pictures of her out in the hallway. And so Chris, or Miss Sari, as we called her at the time, I think was very influential on me. But I also, enjoyed seeing the big companies like ABT and City Ballet, and actually Miss Tuttle I saw dance back in her career. So there's a lot of people.
What do you like about dancing, or what do you like about being a board chair member?
Those are two very different things. So I guess about dance, I mean, I like doing it. I'm not a dancer anymore. I stopped studying when I was about 14. But I continue to like to do it, whether socially or as a academic exercise, take classes, whether it's improvisational or modern or other things. I like how freeing it feels, and I naturally find it very expressive, and I feel very embodied when I get to do it. I mean, even when it's complicated, you feel like you're in your body in a way. And then, and I also love seeing it. I love watching dance. I think it's a beautiful way to express emotions. I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday who is not much of a dance goer and was going to see her first dance performance last night, and I can't wait to talk to her about it because it's sort of like, well, you like other forms of art. Where have you been with dance? It's such a wonderful way to connect to emotion and storytelling, and there's so much interpretation you get to do as an audience member as opposed to things where everything's written. So I like the interpretive quality of it.
Very much agree.
Wonderful. Being a board chair, power. I like power. No, okay. I like helping. I mean, it's the work I do in my day job too, but I like helping organizations function and figure their way through problems and how to survive and hopefully thrive. So, and I think when it's done well, board service is a way to bring in other opinions that aren't necessarily expert at the work that the organization does, but have outside perspective, but also care and knowledge and interest for the work of the organization itself. So
That's really interesting. You also mentioned that your family, you were born into an art industry interest. What about that?
So I'm a Nepo baby, right? That's what we call it now. What about it?
What really sparked your interest, and how did you become to knowing it?
Oh, I'll tell you. I mean, both my parents did different things. My dad was in theater, my mom was in dance. I mean, she worked. This was her office. I'm sitting in my mom's old office. So, truth be told, Cora Khan was the original executive director of this ballet company in the school. So Cora and my father and his work in theater. I mean, it was neat to be around artists, obviously, growing up as a kid. And dancers were coming over. We used to have a party at our house, and, you kind of see everybody. And I got to see a lot of performances growing up. But as a profession, what I was interested in is that, to me, there's some jobs where there's your job that you do, and then you go home and you sort of are your other person. And what I saw with my parents is that their lives felt very integrated, like their work life and their beings were not that separated, and they felt very whole and holistic that way. That it wasn't like they hung their hat up at coming home from the office and were like, okay, now I can be myself. Like they were themselves in their work because what they did, they cared about deeply, or they were deeply interested in, and their friends were the people that they know from their work life. So it felt to me really compelling to have that kind of integration in your life.
That's interesting. How about fundraisers? Because I know you
I do that.
Fundraisers, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's fundraisers as events, and then there's fundraising as a skill, which are two. I mean, they're related. But so and then there's fundraisers people. Like I'm a fundraiser. But so if you mean people who do fundraising, or do you mean fundraising events?
Like fundraising events.
Fundraising events are the least efficient way to raise money, but they are fun and sometimes necessary. And I know we're about to have a gala in June around the season at the Joy, so I won't say too many bad things about it. But having done many of them in my life, it ends up being a lot of work to have something happen in one night. Whereas sometimes you can just write a grant and get a lot more money without having to do all that effort. But what it ultimately is about balance, which I guess as a dancer you could appreciate, because you have to find different ways of asking for money and getting money. And oftentimes with individuals particularly, they need to connect with what it is that you're asking for money about. And one great way to do that is to have people come and tour the school. I'm sure occasionally you have people pop their heads into your classroom and you're like, who's that? And maybe now you kind of get it. But another way is to have a wonderful event where you can talk about and speak about and present and be festive, and people like being social. Volunteerism, being a donor, a part of that is social. So it can't just be write a letter and ask people to write a check. Like it's a different value proposition than asking for a grant from a government entity or from a foundation whose job it is to give money. People are philanthropic, but it isn't their job to give you money. So.
Going back to the topic of you being here in Ballet Tech, what did you like most about the school?
Well, I love that. First of all, the original idea that there was so much talent out in public schools, and that generally the way in which ballet has been perpetuated in the world is privileged and elite because it's expensive to train, and the notion that a school is 100% scholarship and therefore there's no barrier to participation, I think is a beautiful concept, because talent shouldn't be regulated by your ability to pay or for your parents to sacrifice to help you pursue something that you want to do. And also because the ballet world, I think, benefits from different kinds of people being in it and not maintaining its old status as a sort of a white European art form. And I love to see the way in which kids who come here have some sense of talent, but really learn a very specific discipline that I've seen. And I have board members who are former students at the school that I met when they were teenagers like you, who've gone on to have dance careers or not, but really continue to feel like what they got out of being a student here serves them in their life in ways beyond the development of their talent as dancers.
What pieces have you performed here?
Well, I got to be in one ballet because when I was a student here, there wasn't a ballet tech school and there wasn't a kids performance element, but because I was here in the very beginning of the school. But Elliot, I think, had some kids around. He's like, I'm going to make a ballet. I'm going to put some kids in it. So there was a ballet he made in 1978 or 9 called Papillon, which is very beautiful, kind of old-fashioned. It's about, papillon is French for butterfly. So it's about butterflies and spiders and caterpillars and one human, a butterfly catcher. So the central drama is that this one butterfly catching human is trying to catch all these butterflies, and they're outsmarting him by dancing. And the costumes are by Willa Kim, who, there used to be some of her drawings in here, but I'm sure they're around too. And there's an exhibit about her work at the Library of the Performing Arts right now at Lincoln Center that I hope you go see. And if you watch very carefully, you will see me in a video in that library with my little butterfly wings on.
I will make sure to.
You have to really watch closely.
Yeah.
There were 9 of us. I wasn't the only one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Your secret hobby is actually cooking. What do you like to cook, and how did you start?
That's true. I started cooking alongside my father, who was the chef in our family growing up, and he was a kind of a natural cook. I mean, he was self-trained. And my mother was not ever a good cook, and I'm trying to teach her now. But and so I would just help him, and as I helped him, I was sort of the sous chef, and I got to really like doing things with my hands. And you know how in dance sometimes you hit like a flow stage where you're not really thinking, you're just what you're doing and you're doing it. It's a really satisfying place to be after working really hard. And I think sometimes cooking, sometimes it makes people really nervous and stressed out, but for my dad, it was a way to relax, and I learned that way from him, although I'm not always relaxed when I cook if it's under pressure, but I enjoy it because once you get good at something, you can kind of be like, I'm doing this, and it's a nice way for me to change the tenor of my day. I did do it professionally for a small period of time after working here, and when I did that, I was a pastry chef, so my specialty is sweets, but some people say you're either a saucier or a pâtissier, and like sauciers are improvisers and pâtissiers follow instructions and have to be really precise. And you could kind of make a ballet or a modern comparison, but I could do both. I can switch.
That's good.
I can switch.
And your favorite like food to cook, or like a specific pastry?
Okay, well, there's two. I mean, I make wedding cakes for friends, and that's a whole project. It takes a few days to do, but and it's really satisfying because it's a like really nice thing to be able to do. A lot of them are not good, and when you make one yourself, I mean, I make them pretty tasty, but and this is crazy because I don't do it very often, but I got back into making puff pastry, which is this thing where you have to fold dough over and over and over again around one piece of butter until you get a million layers. And people buy it. You can buy it packaged at a store, and I do that sometimes to cheat. But a few times recently, I was like, let me see if I can still do this, because I used to make puff pastry every other day for like a year. And I kind of started doing it again. I was like, oh, I still know how to feel the dough and how to feel if it needs to be refrigerated or, when to stop and when to put it back in. And it came out really beautiful. And I was like, oh, it's one of those things, not like ballet, like, where you really have to keep it up. But I was like, oh, it's still in there somewhere, and I can bring that out and do it again. So I've been doing that a few times lately. But I don't know if it's my favorite thing, but it was satisfying.
The power of muscle memory.
Exactly.
Yeah. Once again, this is Bogdana, and this is Ballet Tech Talks, and today we interviewed Jilian Gersten. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Speaking with cooking, do you have any other talents, like secret talents or hobbies?
No, that's it. No, I'm really good at wrapping presents. In fact, Elliot, such a sneaky person. When I was a kid and, we would have gift exchanges, he would be part of our family if we had like a Hanukkah or holiday celebration. Every now and then he would say, this is your present, don't open it, but wrap it for me. So I would wrap my own presents, which took a lot of discipline to not look.